Alright guys, quick update on the adaptations that I made to my QI system. This is Tuesday morning, so this would be collection number 9. So this is the result of everything that we did in uh, collection 8, so phase 8. Phase 8 in my original series was like the big turning point where everything that we're setting up in the beginning kind of comes together, and then we get some momentum to build rapidly for the last few days. So phase 8 was kind of my turning point in the last series. This is the beginning of phase 9. This is the end result of phase 8. I need to manipulate my happiness a little. It's not too out of whack, but I need to manipulate that. Let's collect, and then see where we're at. And I want to compare it to the results from phase 8 from the previous round. So just make a mental note of the resources in the bar. 1,000 coin, 34,000 supplies. Happiness is good. Cool. Goal this round is to get expansion number 9. I went to, I think I had at least 11. I might have had 12 expansions in my previous series. By the end game, I'm going to stop at 10 in this new adaptation, and I'll explain why I think that's a better strategy. Let's get expansion number 9 for now, though. So it consumed pretty much my entire collection in terms of coin. Part of the reason why I'm stopping at 10 expansions this time around instead of going to the 12 or whatever. Let me finish putting this all back together, and then let's make some comparisons. Pretty lean on resources right now. I do have enough for a few more cottages, though. We were low on coin this round. Happiness is going to be out of whack again next round, but we should have enough tile houses to delete to... let me actually double check that first. Only enough happiness to delete. We wouldn't be able to manipulate happiness with 3 cottages, so we'll just do the 1 tile house. Let's figure out what our next collection is going to be. So on paper, our next collection will be 280 coin with 260 supplies on paper, but we don't have the happiness. So after manipulating that, we should be pretty much right at 300 coin, 300 supplies. There's a pretty big supply difference on the goat farms between the 120% and 150. So it should be pretty comfortable at 300, which isn't a whole lot more than we got this collection. The difference is we spent this entire collection on this 9th expansion. Now that that's done, I will probably build expansion number 10, but at the very tail end of the season. So that gives me 4 days to just use the resources that I have to continue building up the city itself without having to add extra space. I had 3 cottages that weren't ready at collection, and I missed that. I guess we could, yeah, that would justify that, to delete a house for that. Cool, so we'll still have the happiness to collect those. Cool. I might actually, I kind of want to run some ballista now that I have the extra coin. I'll work on that. I'm gonna mess up the timer on this tile house, but I'll get some extra ballista. That's nice. I didn't didn't notice those at collection, but nice to get the extra coin. I'm gonna have to edit this because originally I was gonna compare it to phase 8, which was my 7th collection. I think it's gonna be more accurate to compare it to phase 10, which was 9th collection, and that's what I just finished today. So I'm gonna edit this a little bit. But let's do a quick comparison on the structure of both variations, and then as well as the output on the resource side. Okay, so here's the breakdown. After phase 10, so after the 9th collection, this is what I ended up with in both variations. I had 9 expansions after this collection, this variation. That's what I planted. in my old system, I planted number 8 at that collection. I have 5 arches after this, and have had 5 arches. I planted the 5th arch at the end of phase 10 last round. I did have happiness balance in the old system. New system will still need to be manipulated next round once these 2 cottages cook. So it's not perfect happiness balance. I had 2 farms at the end of phase 10. I did rush the second farm, but I wasn't able to get the collection from the second farm to start phase 10. This variation, I have 4 farms and have had them, so I collected all 4 at the beginning of this. End of previous version, I had 3 villa, but I planted 2 of them at the collection and did not rush them, so 2 of these villa would not be collectible for phase 11. 0 villa in this variation. 10 cottages in the previous version that had all been established. 16 in this variation, 2 of them I just planted, but these will be ready for collection next round. I just got to remember that they're an hour behind. 8 Taylor in the previous version, and this is the big thing. I'll come back to that. I think that's the big difference here. 0 Tile House or Butcher at the end of phase 10 in the previous version, and 5 Tile House, 4 Butcher in this variation. Previous variation was theoretically 300 over 320 on supplies, 300 coin, 320 supplies, but the 2 villas I didn't rush, so theoretically 300, but in reality the upcoming collection would be 220 over 320. Theoretically pretty balanced, or pretty even with my upcoming collection from this one, which is about 300 over 300. But everything will be collectible for the next collection. That's the key difference there. Couple key differences between the two. In my old variation, I had already run like 4 or 5 repetitions of Ballista, and then maybe 10 repetitions of Archer. So I had a decent little stockpile of troops. New variation, I've only run Ballista once, so I have like 20 Ballista, and I've ran Archers 2 or 3 times. I think I have about 30, so a little lower on the troop side, but I am an expansion ahead, and the last expansion I got was 240 goods, so 240,000 of each resource. So that's a chunk of change that I had applied to troops in the old variation. But I think if you can survive, we're on difficulty 6 now, if you can survive, even if you got a manual battle, applying those extra resources to the expansion will help in the end game more, I believe. Second key difference is shard consumption. I rushed all 4 of my farms this variation. In the previous variation, I rushed 1 farm and I rushed an arch or something just to make the videos. But for the most part, I wasn't using shards to rush buildings. In previous version, I did spend, I think it was 600 or 700 shards on actions. I think I bought the 450 pack and then the 310 pack or something like that. So I spent more shards on actions in the previous version, more shards on city development in the new variation. So those are kind of the behind the scenes variables. For the most part, the supply or the production is pretty similar on both of them. Like I said, the behind the scenes stuff is shard consumption as well as expansions versus troops. Structurally though, the big difference is going to be on Taylor. So previous variation, I ended up with 4 farms in the end, but I think I deleted 1 Taylor maybe. So I ended up with 4 farms, but I still had primarily Taylor, and the city grid was basically built around Taylors. So I had 4 farms, but there really wasn't a way to fit a 5th one in there. So that became a limitation in the end game. Not to mention the purpose of planting a Taylor is to increase supply production, but it costs 25,000 to plant it, and it only produces 19,000 on the collection. So it actually takes 2 collection cycles to even break even on a Taylor. Not to mention the the fact that it's kind of inflexible where you can't replace that with a farm later on. And it's actually a waste of resources if you do try that, because you're basically spending supplies twice just to get the farm. Whereas if you go straight from a butcher, which costs 0 supplies, if you go straight from butcher to farm, you only spend those supplies once. So Taylor's the main difference there. Another key difference here, kind of along the same lines as the Taylor, I think Cottage, for the intermediary building, I think Cottage is actually worth the investment. It only costs 6,000 coin, generates 20,000 on the collection, so that is actually profitable. Whereas the Taylor costs more supplies than it produces. So I think the Cottage is a reasonable investment. But for the most part, this new variation depends more on these cheaper buildings until the later stages. Whereas my old variation, I had eliminated all of those basic buildings pretty early on. The nice thing with having these cheap buildings later on is that you can manipulate your happiness, first of all. Plus, it's easier to delete a pair of Tile House and Butcher for another farm. So in this variation, I'll end up with 6 farms when it's all said and done. And could plant more if I wanted. But the previous version, I ended up with 4 and didn't have space or the setup to plant any more than that. So that's the big advantage here with these cheaper buildings. Let's look at, so that's it for the, take a mental note of this, that's it for the statistics breakdown. Let's take a look at the structural difference. Horizontal spacing is the same on both systems. It's 3 space of 3 on the right, space of 6 on the left. I had the exact same housing pattern in both systems. Disconnected archer in the same location, both systems. And the same general pattern for the layout. It's a pair of house and production, and then production on the back, right? And the difference is, in the old system, I had a space of 4 in the back that was designed for a row of Taylors, right? And a row of 6 on the front that's designed for a pair of house and Taylor. New variation has a space of 5 on the back and 5 on the front. And this is designed for a pair of Tile House and Butcher that can be deleted and replaced with a farm. So these expansions are always going to be a variable. That just depends on where your obstacles are. In the previous variation, I had this expansion up here with another farm. You can see there's obstacles on both of those. These expansions were obstacle free in this variation, so I basically just mirrored that same concept and put two farms down here instead. Just a mirror image. That's just going to depend on where your obstacles are. Structurally, though, the big difference is that the previous system with the Taylors in the back wasn't really flexible and wasn't really designed to end up holding farms eventually. Whereas this new system is built with the idea of being able to put a farm basically off of any face of the town hall, right? If that makes sense. So structurally, that's the big difference. One more variable that I forgot about. I did plant an aqueduct a few cycles ago, actually, which was a little premature, but that is part of the strategy for the variation that I'm doing this round. I do want to start planting aqueducts earlier on instead of trying to plant a bunch of towers at the end stage. The towers do work, and the nice thing is that they build quickly, so you don't have to pre-plan that a whole lot. You can just delete a bunch of houses, drop in a bunch of towers, and start rolling on the map. Whereas the aqueduct, you do have to plan ahead a little bit. The nice thing with the aqueduct, though, is that it's a little more efficient on happiness for the same attack output. And I hear people complain, oh, aqueduct is red and blue, it's better to focus on just one color. The problem with that is if you get into higher levels on the map, especially if you're in a small guild where some people can't fight on any tile, the few people that are able to fight are they end up having to hit both just to make progress on the map. So that's where the aqueduct is kind of advantageous to me. I've always done the tower method before. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I got pretty good results with it from my previous series. I was able to auto battle on level 11. It wasn't comfortable. I lost a lot of troops, but I was able to auto battle. So there's nothing wrong with the tower strategy. I do want to try the aqueduct theory, this variation though. I think that about covers it. I do think this variation is a little more streamlined. I shuffled this house into here just to make room for the ballista camp. After we run a cyclo-ballista, I'm going to reset my roads down here with my housing. So that'll give us another room for another arch. In my previous series, I had the same 5 arches, but I didn't have space for another arch. Until I got expansion number 9. So this variation, we already have expansion number 9, and we have room for another arch just automatically on the next collection. So I do think this is a little more streamlined towards the end game. 4 farms versus the 2 from the previous variation, but I've mapped out farm number 5 and farm number 6 right here, and those will be easy to plug in, right? No rearranging required. So I think this newer variation is a little more streamlined. I think that covers it. If I forgot anything, I'll make a footnote. But if you guys have questions, comments, feel free to drop me a message or whatever. I'll talk to you later. Bye.